Hi guys, thank you so much for joining us. So this week we are speaking to Acorn, the community union, and I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves a little bit. So I'll hand over to Anna first. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hiya, I'm Anna. I'm the chair of Acorn in Lancaster and Morecambe.
Lesh. And Annie?
Hi, I'm Annie. I am one of Acorn's national organisers.
Sweet, thanks guys. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to speak to you both is that in Wales we don't have a particular tenants movement that we see as extremely active at the moment, but we do see Acorn doing fantastic things in Bristol, Leeds, Manchester, like all across the country. I couldn't name all of the branches, so I'm really interested to ask you guys all about that. But we see all of that happening, and I think it's really intriguing for us to try and understand, you know, what's going on and how we can build the tenants movement here in Wales. So I'm really happy that you've come on the show today. Thank you so much. And just for everyone watching, Steve in the top left corner is our film guy. Give everyone a wave, Steve. So don't be perturbed if you see Steve in the corner. He's filming us today. So if you don't mind, guys, I'm just gonna jump into some questions. The first one is, can you tell me why Acorn came into existence, and you know, what was it that made people get organised?
Yes, I think I can answer that. Acorn started in Bristol with a group of people that a lot of us had been involved in the trade union movement, but felt that there was a real gap in terms of solidarity and organising on issues outside of the workplace. And we were looking at examples from around the world where there'd been lots of success with that. We were particularly all affected by private renters issues. And we found that Acorn existed across different things in the world and wanted to kind of replicate that to win things for ordinary people. So it started off in Easton with a group of people knocking on doors, finding out what the local issues were in that area of Bristol, Easton. Got 100 people to a launch meeting and voted that we wanted to start working on private renters issues. When we started, we kind of envisaged it as a local group, but because we took on such a big issue to start with, it really spiraled and snowballed, which was great to be in a whole Bristol branch and then kind of popping up all around the country as well, because I think people are really angry and they want to do things that make real material changes to their lives. And I think the fact that we've won so much means it's been quite inspirational around the country. Anna's branch in Lancaster started back in November and they've been really successful, so it might be worth Anna saying kind of what got it started and as a much more recent branch there.
Yeah, so our branch has only been going since last summer because we had a member defence case that started stuff off, which was my landlord trying to evict us. And so we kind of built that was initially what got our branch started, and we've built our branch around that. And since then we've been like defending members from other situations with bad landlords, bad housing, and then we're organising like other campaigns at the moment around renters in the pandemic and trying to get protections for people around that as well.
Thanks, guys. I'm wondering if you can tell me what is like the legal picture for you guys doing this action, you know, for tenants in the UK compared to other countries. What does the tenants' voice look like for you guys to be able to organise in?
I guess the UK has got appalling housing law compared to a lot of other countries. So across Europe, for example, much more people rent, but they've got a lot more protections. It's a lot harder to evict people, and rents on average are a lower proportion of people's incomes. So particularly for renters, although we're not just a renters union, but particularly on that issue, there's a lot of people that are really struggling. And anyone who rents will know that like rents have just been going up loads and loads in the past 10 years. So yeah, there's definitely kind of that perspective. We've had some really good kind of legal wins over the years. We were involved in getting agency fees banned. So before, for anyone who doesn't rent, you might know that you might not know, but if you went through a lettings agent, you had to pay them like 300, 400, 500 quid just to do the paperwork for you, on top of what they got from the landlord. So you were looking as a renter at needing, you know, £1,000 if not £2,000 to move, which was a real drain on people. So we've had that. That is now illegal, which is great. We've also been involved in changing the law around evictions, although that hasn't come into force yet. So it does show that, like, although you can just start by knocking on doors in your local neighbourhood, you can start affecting big laws. But really, things that we aspire to are things like, you know, fair rents across the board, but also other big community issues, like we're working across the country before the pandemic on better public transport that's publicly controlled as well.
Can you explain that a little bit more for me, actually? What is the issue around better public transport?
So lots of places, lots of local authorities have kind of farmed out their bus contracts to private companies who own the contracts. They get to design what the routes are, they get to design what the prices are. What we found is that means that there's extortionate prices, a low quality of service, buses not coming on time, lots of more remote places not having any services anymore, which is disproportionately affects poorer people, older people and disabled people that rely on it, and a lot of our members. So we're campaigning for councils to be able to bring back buses into public control. And this has happened because First Bus, which is one of the biggest companies that provide buses and run bus services in this country, are going to be selling up their bus enterprise in the UK. So it's come at a really good time to kind of redesign public transport so it works for our members and ordinary people, and not just for the profits of you know, big shareholders.
Awesome. Do you know, I always find this conversation around transport in the UK really funny. Like when you go to London and like there's not a train like every, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, and people have a meltdown, and I'm like, in Merthyr there's one an hour, literally one.
So yeah, we're really like so London has the system that we're really wanting to come in. London has a lot more control over its public transport, is able to design the routes so that it works for people. And that's what we want to see across the country, basically.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm wondering if you can explain to me like how the Acorn structure exists. Like, do you have branches? Is it kind of like a trade union? We have trade union branches. How does that function?
Perhaps if I explain the national, then Anna, you could explain how that works on a local level.
Yeah.
So we have branches across the country, and a branch is defined as a group of Acorn members in a place with 100 members or more on their own bank account. And then each of those branches sends delegates to a national strategy group, so that everyone from all around the branches can be represented at making national campaign decisions. And then where we start up smaller groups, they're just called groups. We've got quite a few of them around the country, who kind of their aim is to build up to 100 members to then become a branch. So yeah, it's very much like a trade union. The people who live in that city get to decide on the campaigns for that city. It can't be affected by, you know, someone on the other side of the country, but we can all do national campaigns together.
Awesome.
Yeah, and on the sort of local level, then we just have like our members. So in our group, we have about 80 members at the moment, and then we have like a committee who's elected, and we vote on, like, everybody votes on what campaigns we want to run. So if we go out door knocking, we find out what people need in the area, and then like we vote on campaigns that we want to run, and all our members have a vote, everybody that joins.
Oh, lush. So in terms of, let me just get my head around this. So there's a group that's less than 100, and then if you get 100 people, that's a branch. Yeah. And then the branch sends delegates onto a national committee or a national group?
Yeah, so it's called the National Strategy Group. And the people that sit on the strategy group, it's their job to make sure that the members on the ground are represented at a national level. But yeah, you only do that once you're a branch, because we want the smaller groups to concentrate on building up locally, concentrate on, you know, getting that local identity and really embedding themselves into the community before they get bogged down with kind of big national work. I'm sure lots of people watching might have been in organisations where you do get kind of bogged down with bureaucracy, and we don't want that for our starting groups. We want them to be able to pick fights and go for it on a local level.
Gosh. I'm wondering if you can tell me a bit more about like the campaigns that you've run. Like, I'm really interested in hearing the campaigns that you've run, Anna, in Lancaster as well. Would you be able to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So because we're obviously like at the moment we're fairly small, we're not a branch yet, but we've been mostly doing member defence cases for people who had bad landlords, and we're at the moment we're running a COVID support network, which is like nationally, that's happening with lots of Acorn groups, and we're campaigning at the moment as well, for rents to be dropped for students who are living on the campus, university in Lancaster, and we've got like 400 students committed to a rent strike, so we're like building that campaign at the moment, and hopefully we're going to win that. So we're kind of like, we've had like mostly member defence cases, but we're like looking to build bigger campaigns now that our membership's growing, and yeah, like basically everything we do, we're trying to like empower people who join the union so that they can also fight for stuff that they need, and like we don't want to do things for people, we want to bring them in and fight for stuff together. So that's kind of what we've been doing so far.
Amazing. How did you get 400 people to agree to a rent strike? That's wild.
I think it's partly like the circumstances like are pretty extraordinary. I think things are coming to seem possible that people didn't think were before, and I think a lot of people are like, because the students aren't living in their halls anymore, I think like are realizing that actually, like I was phone banking a lot of students yesterday about the rent strike, and a lot of them had like filled in this like petition to the uni, but they'd said that they weren't willing to withhold their rent. And I just rang around loads of them yesterday, and I was like, look, there's like 300 people who've committed to this, like you know don't pay your rent. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, because I think people have a sense, when they have a sense of the power of like standing and strength in numbers, like people are much more likely to get on board, and I think like that there's definitely a feeling amongst the like student renting community at the moment that universities like absolutely like don't care about their interests, and the fact that these rents haven't been stopped is like pretty outrageous. So a lot of them are like willing to withhold their rent, I think.
Amazing. And I remember seeing some of the campaigns you were doing, Annie, in Bristol like a couple of years ago. Can you explain to me the ones that you've done? Like, what are the campaigns that you've done over the period of Acorn? I want to know everything.
Okay, cool. So as I said, like we started small. So our first ever campaign was basically a member defence case for our member Jackie, who was an elderly lady with mobility issues, living in this horrible rented house with mushrooms growing on the wall, broken back door. That house was owned by a local letting agent who was also the landlord and also ran some like bistro cafe chain. So we did a great first action picketing that cafe and got him to fix up that house. Since then, we've been involved in getting landlord licensing across different cities in the UK, so campaigning for better regulated protections for renters. One of the favourite campaigns that we won for me in Bristol was fighting to stop the council from taking council tax benefit away from 25,000 households. So the council wanted to take this benefit away, which would have meant people had to fork out, £60 to £100 a month, which when you're on the dole is a hell of a lot of money. So we did a campaign where we door knocked all across the areas of the city that were most affected. We mass attended councillor surgeries, and basically put the pressure on to get the councillors to kind of rebel against the Labour position and drop the drop the plan to stop that benefit. So that was really great. And another one that wasn't specifically about renting. We also did a campaign against a provider of emergency accommodation. So this particular provider runs most of the emergency accommodation, which, for people who don't know, that's accommodation for people who are at risk of homelessness. The council will put you up in these temporary flats, sometimes B&Bs, and often this is a private company. This particular private company has loads of money and had bought up a block of flats that were previously privately rented, had evicted all of the tenants in order to turn those block of flats into emergency accommodation, where you could charge the council and the taxpayer like £400 a week to house someone in one room. So they'd literally made people homeless to profit from homelessness. The conditions in some of these were really bad. So we did a big campaign, two-pronged approach, getting the council to say that they wouldn't offer contracts to people that did this, which we won, and also doing big protests outside of their offices. This particular company likes to present a nice ethical face. One of the arms of their company is like greenhousing and community spaces and stuff. So we kind of showed that up for the fact that they might be doing that on one side, but on the other side, they are exploiting the homelessness crisis, and won that. So that was really good. So yeah, there's been a whole host of campaigns. And yeah, as Anna said before, a lot of our bread and butter is member defence cases. So when our members come to us who've got problems with their landlords, or letting agencies, or the council or housing associations. And I think what's really important is, rather than, you know, just writing a few letters and trying to appeal to their nicer side, we're a direct action organisation. The actions that we do to get them to change their behaviour is about using our strength in numbers and confronting those people head on through pickets, protests, demonstrations. And we're looking at adapting that now in the time of COVID-19 for how we can apply digital pressure to these targets to make them behave as well.
I'm glad you've gone into that. It's something I wanted to ask you about, was how is Acorn responding to this COVID situation in terms of housing?
Cool. If I talk a bit about housing, then maybe Anna could talk a bit about our community response, because she's been a lot more involved on the ground than I have on that side. But in terms of housing, we've been running a national campaign from the beginning of March to call on the government to do better protections for renters. And we're really pleased that 2 of our campaign demands have been met by the government, to extend the notice that landlords have to give private renters, and also to ban evictions. So they've done these things for 90 days, but we're looking for more. We're currently campaigning campaigning for the government to enact a rent waiver during this time for people, and also to ban those Section 21 evictions, which is what I spoke about earlier. For people who don't know, a Section 21 is a no-fault eviction, where your landlord can evict you without giving a reason. It's not because you've been antisocial or you've broken the house or you in arrears. They can just kick you out. The government has committed to getting rid of Section 21 but hasn't followed through, and we think that at this time, when housing is such an important thing for people's health, that it will be a really good time to ban it. So we're doing an online national campaign, and we're looking at doing a strategy day with the strategy group to work out how we can win those broader demands. And yeah, Anna's been doing a lot more on the ground supporting people.
Yeah, so our branch and a load of other branches of Acorn around the country have basically, we've used our organised membership to set up community support networks for people who are affected by the coronavirus. So people vulnerable, get supplies, prescription deliveries, post, and also check-in calls for people who are isolated to combat loneliness. So it shows kind of how having organised communities already makes a massive difference when these things happen, because we have this network that exists. We've been able, in a couple of days, we were able to mobilise a response to that, get leaflets out all over the city. We've got 150 volunteers in our network here who are meeting people's needs. And to me, like, that's just kind of an extension of like the work that Acorn does all the time. It's protecting our communities. It's like getting the stuff that people need that we know that the government or people, you know, in power are not going to provide. And like making sure that our community stands together, and like we can, when we work together, like we can win stuff that we need. We can make sure that people are protected. So like it's pretty powerful. We had somebody who, one of the volunteers got in touch with me the other day because she'd been on the phone to someone who had collapsed while she was on the phone to her, an elderly woman, and she called an ambulance and got her to hospital, and she's been like checking in on her since then. And that's somebody who like doesn't have any family, would have been like not been supported by anybody else, but like because our union's there, she's been protected by that, and she's part of a community response.
Making me emotional.
It's like one more thing that we've done on housing is we've been supporting our members in certain places to write letters to their landlords and letting agencies and housing associations and local councils, asking them for rent reductions if they're struggling to pay. And some of our branches have been doing that anyway, just sending it to the biggest providers of housing in the city. First of all, because we think that if they can afford to, then they should, but also because it's a good it's a good exercise for us working out, especially where we're new, what the sorts of attitudes are of different landlords and letting agents and how they might respond in the future when we're inevitably going to come up against them. We've had some really good successes. In Bristol, we had a really large landlord who gave a 50% blanket reduction to all of their tenants as a result of this letter campaign. Others have not been so nice. We've got a campaign at the moment in Bristol. There's a landlord based in North London that owns this block of flats where there's mainly self-employed people living who just can't pay because they're not getting any money till June. They came back to us and flat out said, no, you have to pay your full rent. So currently now members are digitally kind of writing to that landlord. We're doing a mass letter campaign to try and get them to rescind their position and support our members who are in financial difficulty there. And I think it's like helped people to feel confident to ask for the reductions at this time, knowing that there is a framework that's been working around the country.
Amazing. I think it's important to point out to people listening in Wales that obviously housing is devolved in Wales and we face similar issues, but sometimes they can be dealt with by the Welsh Government, which could be more effective than the Tories in Westminster. Debatable. And we've seen over COVID that actually what has happened is a really big light has been shone on how little a voice tenants really have in Wales, and how difficult it's been to enact some of the things that you guys were making wins in England with against the Tories, that we were struggling to win with the Welsh Government, which has been extremely shocking. So with that said, I'm wondering, how we can get Acorn developing here in Wales, like what will need to be our next steps, and if you guys can give me some advice for anyone who's wanting to set up a branch here in Wales. Like,
cool. So it'd be fantastic to see a branch, and I know that there's people who are actively looking to get something set up in Cardiff. We're actually going to be holding a Zoom call in the next few weeks for people in and around the Cardiff area who are interested in that. So if you want in on that, you can email info@acorncommunities.org.uk to get the details. The next thing really is networking and getting a solid group of people together that are keen to do this. You can have a look on our Acorn Tenant Support Group, which is an online peer-to-peer support thing we do on Facebook, and there's plenty of people who post in there with tenancy problems every day. That's a good place to start engaging people. If you see someone in your area who's going through something, to talk to them about, well, what do you think about setting up a union? once we've got like a quota of people that are up for putting in the work and the time, because Anna will attest, it does take like a bit of work to get this going and a commitment, but it's really worth it. But yeah, once we're at that level, we can come and give you loads of training in strategy, door knocking, all of that, to get it off the ground and rolling. And it'd be great to see that in Wales as well, because as you said, Harriet, it isn't just a problem that you know, people dealing with the Tories have to deal with. It's a problem that people across the British Isles are having to deal with, and we're stronger as a united voice than we are as divided.
Beautiful. I'm wondering, this is like quick fire question, right? If you could give some advice after everything you've learned from the organising you've been doing with Acorn to people who are listening now and they're thinking, right, I'm definitely going to get in contact with Acorn, like one bit of advice to get them going when they're organising.
Do you want to go first, Anna?
Yeah. If you want something to exist, you have to make it yourself, and you can do that. Anyone can do that. Like, you don't have to be particularly like skilled or like know what to do. If you get together with a group of people and you decide that you want to get organised, like you can do that, and you can be the person that makes it happen. And then like once you like start to like feel empowered and like know what you're doing, like there's so many other people who'll be empowered by that, and it's great.
Mic drop. Annie, have you got a little piece of advice as well?
Yeah, kind of in a similar vein, but like you don't have to be the most confident or outspoken person to do this. And in fact, Acorn isn't necessarily made up of like the loudest person in each room. We're made up of people that are willing to put the time in and, you know, and really want to see that change in their community. A really good exercise for anybody to do if they're thinking about starting a union, whether that's at work or if it's where they live, is to do what's called personal mapping. So get yourself a piece of paper, put your name in the middle, draw little lines coming off of your name like a spider diagram, and each line will be a different place that you know people from. So you can have a line for work, you can have a line for family, you can have a line for the pub, and then write around those people that you know from that you think might be interested in getting involved in the union, and ask them. The biggest reason when people are surveyed for not being in a union, so why are you not in a union, the biggest reason is always nobody ever asked me. It's not it's too expensive or I don't trust unions, it's because we're not reaching out to each other enough. So have a little think, do that mapping, and then be bold about your ambitions and ask those people around you that you trust.
Lush. Thank you so much, guys. So for anyone listening in Wales, as Annie said, please join Acorn and join the Zoom call that they'll be sending you information about soon, and let's get this thing started. In the words of Shirley Bassey, let's get this party started.